there, Eimear Burke here. Welcome to Fireside Chat number 4, brought to you by the Order of Bards, Elves and Druids. And this is where I am in conversation with a member of the Order who isn't very well known, but I'm sure you'll have found from the last 3 conversations is that there are some absolutely fantastic members of the Order with absolutely wonderful stories. I hope, I don't know what you thought of, so let me know if you're here. I don't know what you thought of the introductory thing. I actually started it and then didn't realize I hadn't gone live. I know feedback from Philip's Tea with the Druid on Monday that people liked it. It gave them time to settle in. So just let me know if you think it's okay or if it's an affectation that we can do without. So I'm just going to see who's here before I introduce our mystery guest for this evening. So hi from Orléans, France, Anne-Marie, Stefan Makoba, from Liverpool, Canada, Zoe, Rachel Brown for Hampshire, Colorado, Martha, Jason from South Africa, welcome. Keith from Idaho, hi Jamie, Jamie Morgan, Jerry Christopher, yes, it was helpful, thank you. Hi from the Netherlands, that's Yvonne. Pauline Smith, how are you? And Les, great to see you. Hello from Belgium, Eva. Philip, great to see you. And you're able to stop scrolling. Are you able to? Anyway, oh, can I stop that? I will. Let me try that. Okay, I'm getting feedback from Philip here. If I can get in here and do that. Hide. Great, done. I'm getting very impressed with my ability to sort out technology here. And hi, Jade from Preston and Hele from Norway. Okay, so I'd like to introduce my guest this evening is Craig Smith.
Hello.
Hi, Craig, and very, very welcome to this Fireside Chat.
Thank you.
I don't know how long I know you, but I have some memories of meeting you in the campsite. So generally in the summer gatherings, I go in my camper van, and you're usually the first person I would meet because I would roll into the Avalon campsite, find my thing, and there would be you in your little Satantii camping community. And you've
the village that we bring down every year, absolutely.
You've always been one of the first people to greet me. And one I really appreciated was just a few months after Howard died. You jumped up as soon as you saw my van, and it was just so reassuring and so kind and caring of you that I've never forgotten that. Thank you.
I think more importantly, I also introduced you to Waze, the app for getting around the country in that campsite. So, you know, there you go.
You did, and it worked really well in the UK, but all wrong.
I remember you telling me that at one point you were driving at the wrong speed because you hadn't realised the difference between miles and kilometres and were wondering why everyone was beeping you.
That's right. That's right. There's a comment from Jane Myatt. At the 50th campsite, they were the rowdy crowd. Okay, that was you and the Satantii group.
do you know? There's this common myth that I'm the rowdy one in that group, and can I just say for the record, it's absolutely not true.
So, can you name who it is?
No, what happens in Avalon stays in Avalon.
Lovely. Anyway, Craig, I don't know how. So, what is it that brought you to Druidry?
I think that's a really interesting question. I remember my mum tells me this story that one of the first things that I ever asked her was, if heat rises, why is it cold at the top of a mountain? So I was kind of always quite an inquisitive young person. And I suppose a part of that was also being inquisitive about spirituality and the meaning of life and why we're here and all those kind of big questions. So I then at the time went to a Roman Catholic secondary school. And so that was really my introduction to religion and faith. And I was 8 years old and I chose to be baptized into the Catholic faith. And for a long time, I really enjoyed that. I got an awful lot out of it. But I also remember my primary school teacher, when we were getting ready for our first Holy Communion, we had these little books that we had to do. And one of them was draw a picture of God. And after about an hour, I kind of took this book up to my teacher and I was kind of like, I just can't do this. And she was like, Craig, of all the people in the class, thought you'd had a really clear idea of what God is. And I just remember saying, but God isn't a man with a big beard sitting on a throne in the clouds. And she just laughed at me. And then I suppose as I got a little bit older, I fell out of love with Catholicism for various reasons. I remember being really annoyed about its treatment of women. And then as I came out later as gay, that was the kind of the final nail in the coffin. And I really started to explore what spirituality means to me and how I could connect with that. And as I kind of went through my late teens and then off to university, where I read ancient history and archaeology, and I fell in love with the mythological cycle of ancient Egypt. And that's really when I got the bug. We were really fortunate that I got to go over to Egypt and spend some time studying female iconography in tombs and temples and just feeling at home in that space. That was it. And I suppose that when I was living in Liverpool at one point, and I had a kind of sense or a feeling or a vision that the goddess, that spirit, was telling me to go and explore the spirituality of the place in which I live. And I remember having this real kind of sense that there wasn't a great big river Nile where I lived, but there was a river Mersey. And so go and explore that, go and find the spirituality of the land in which you live. And then for whatever reason, just the word druid just kind of jumped out at me from lots of different places. And I'd originally looked at the OBOD website when it was still a dial-up connection in kind of my late teens. And then I kind of remembered that for whatever reason and signed up then. And that was kind of 10 years ago. And I suppose here I am now.
It's just something that strikes me is the importance of connecting with your own landscape. And we have so many members all over the world. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a challenge for people who aren't from these lands here, or there's a notion that, Druidry comes from the so-called Celtic lands, or from Europe. So how do you connect with your own landscape? And I think that is crucial, to be able to connect with your Mersey or your Nile. I think or whatever. I think it's very, very important.
And I think the great thing about OBOD Druidry is that it gives us a framework that we can really use to connect to whatever mythological cycle or place that we choose to connect to. So just because we're a Druid organization, you don't necessarily need to follow the Celtic mythological cycle or to visit Stonehenge and Newgrange. You can apply the course material and the rituals to literally the landscape in which you live, because we have some great landscapes around the world, and all of these different places have different spirits and different feelings. I think that's the beauty in many ways of the OBOD course.
I agree with you. And I think we have a responsibility to connect with our landscape wherever we are as Druids. And that is, Druidry is about connecting with our own landscape and nature, and being able to find that and connecting with the genius loci, the stories and the mythology. I absolutely agree with you. And it's only when you can do that do you feel at home in that landscape, rather than feeling sometimes like an outsider.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that when we do find ourselves in different landscapes, that we just spend some time listening to their stories. We don't need to go and appropriate other cultures. We can just go and listen, and the spirits of that place will tell us their story in a way that we can really identify and adapt to. So we don't need to call things by other cultures' names. We can go and ask them what their name is, and they will tell us in our own language, But I suppose that kind of comes down to, I've always had this idea that deity, whatever it is and however it expresses itself, always expresses it to you in the cultural clothes that you understand. So for me, all these different pantheons around the world, they're the same expression of deity. They just speak to our souls in a different way. So at the time, I could understand the myths of ancient Egypt. They sang to my soul, and they helped me understand and develop what spirituality means to me. And now I sing to a different song, and I think that's absolutely fine.
Absolutely. And I love to hear you say that, because I've had conversations with, you say, people in Australia, or maybe people in North America, who find it difficult because their members of the colonizers who,
Yeah.
not these people themselves, but when you think of the damage done to First Nations people in all of these countries, and then there's a guilt, like, are we appropriating something from Native America or from the Aboriginals? But I think what you say there is, for us as Druids to speak to the spirits of place, they will speak to us. They will speak to us in a language that we understand. We can connect and hear the stories of the people who live there, and then we have our own names, because no matter where people have gone, they found their own names for spirit, just like you say. So you were in Egypt and you had Isis and Osiris and whoever else, and then you come to the Mersey and they have other names, and I think it's really, really important.
I think I don't know if you were there at the summer gathering where we had the play from the guys from Orotawea from New Zealand, and they did this whole kind of play around identity and culture. And I mean, I don't think there was a dry eye in the house by the end of that play. But I think that they just encapsulated it really, really well. This idea that you can go and connect with the land, and you can connect with cultures in a really, really positive way, if only you're prepared to sit down and listen.
Yes, and there's a cat. Hi.
It's it's Gandalf. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. Hi, Gandalf.
He said hi.
Moira was one of the New Zealanders, and she was married to a Maori man, and so her children are Maori. She speaks Maori, and I met her at the Shaboda gathering in 2019 in New Zealand.
Right.
And I was blown away that she and her sister Joanna, they're both members of the Grove of the Summer Stars in Wellington. And those two sisters and their two sisters married Maori men. So they're embedded in Maori culture.
Yeah.
She's of Irish origin. And they've incorporated a lot of Maori traditions into the Druid rituals. So, for example, Philip, Stephanie, and I went there, and we were greeted with this Maori ritual called a porphyry, which is a traditional greeting. And they spoke to us in Maori. And it was just, now she had checked with her own elders and her own guides, you know, her own community about the appropriateness of all of this. And it was just absolute magic. And I would hope to get her on a fireside chat to get her to talk about this. It was just wonderful.
I think she'll be amazing.
And
I think one of
Go on.
Oh, go on. So I think one of the interesting things that I'm learning through what I do in my day job is that actually people of all faith, there's more that unites all of us as people of faith than will ever divide us, and the similarities between so many of the world's major religions. We just share so much in common, and I think that it's a shame that at times that we put up barriers between ourselves, because when you actually spend time around people of different faiths in a multi-faith environment, you really learn what it is to be. And literally we all do the same thing, we just have a slightly different lexicon. So
I think when we can give up our need to be right, then it's okay, because is ours the one true grove? Because like you, I was brought up a Roman Catholic, and of course that was the one true church, and you get a little bit of, is ours the one true grove, wherever it is, and it's like nonsense. And it's around giving up that need to be right. And I was watching online a dialogue, an interfaith dialogue today, and it was just wonderful listening to speakers from different faiths talking about the way to go forward in these times. And it's like, I get all these people. But they're interfaith, so that notion of let's share our resources, our knowledge, our love for the planet and love for the earth and our beings, and get on with it. And we recognize we have different ways of honoring the divine.
I think you're right in that the trick is to accept that when you get a group of people of faith that sit around a table, the trick is to accept that you think you're right and everyone else around the table is wrong, and you have to accept that they also think that. And it's just that everybody is accepting that we all think that everyone else is a little bit crazy and we're right, and enjoying each other's company through that.
But I think it's kind of, when you look at the order, and how diverse it is, that it's I mean, we have Buddhists, we have Christians, we have non-Christians, atheists, polytheists, animists, Christian ministers, Buddhist monks. So you actually a so-called priesthood, for the want of a better word, from different traditions, and also Druids. That it's not about I'm right, but I know what's right for me. So this is how I express my spiritual path, and you will express yours differently. But it's always that what unites us, that being of service, for example. And I'm going to come to what you do, which would be really interesting. But love of nature, honoring the planet, and knowing or sensing that interconnectedness. And it's those threads that will join us. So it's that, like you said earlier, it's what unites us rather than divides us that's important.
Yeah.
And I remember, I can't remember, was it at the time when Philip made the announcement in Glastonbury? When was that? 2 years ago?
I don't know. All I do remember is I'm going to be late. There's something about me.
Oh, I know.
I think I offered to carry a harp or something for you, and you were just sort of like,
I did. Anyway, that's another story. What was I saying? Describing. Actually, it was you. Yes, now I'm thinking. Anyway, apologies for this little tangent. Let's get back on track. Now I've lost what I was saying. That's gone. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. That for me, OBOD is like a salad rather than a puree. So we don't assimilate everything. There's an integration, but it allows for all the different colors in a salad, the textures. It's not smooth, it's crunchy, and there's little extra bits. And that's what I think the order offers, that ability to look for similarity, but also not just tolerate difference, but to welcome it and to welcome diversity, because that's what makes it interesting.
I think it's that key, isn't it? We always talk about the fact that the great thing about OBOD Druidry is that we agree to disagree respectfully. And we also accept that if you get 10 people round the table at the Georgian Pilgrim, you'll get 25 opinions.
Absolutely. Someone says here, what people call faith seems more to be culture. Love the word divine you just mentioned. I wonder if you have anything to say about that.
What people call faith, more people call culture. I don't really know. I don't think so. I think that there's a very clear distinction between faith and culture, because I suppose that the culture in which I live is quite diverse. I grew up eating mutton kuriaki in Callaloo for Sunday dinner a lot of the time, so that would be my culture. But my faith is something completely different. My faith is my belief in spirituality. My brothers and sisters all had a very similar upbringing to me. Our culture is very similar, but they don't necessarily share my faith, because not everybody wants to be faithful, I suppose.
That's true, because I don't share the faith of my family of origin either. And yet, when my siblings, for example, have come to ceremonies that we've held here in Three Castles, they've been able to engage. But that's not their main. This is really interesting. It's accessible. I get it, and I like it. But I'm still a Catholic, which is fine.
Yeah, and I suppose that with families, I think one of my proudest moments was when my mum came to one of our rituals in our grove. That was kind of up there with the top. I was so proud that the day that happened. And I think that the other thing, again, kind of in my line of work, I often notice that humans have this innate, and maybe it is faith, but this innate need to mark anniversaries. And I suppose that in British culture, we often go and light candles. And so we find a lot of people, they put in requests to come and light candles with us to kind of mark those big moments in their lives. And I suppose that is an expression of faith and culture mixed. I don't know.
And funny, candles and fire are almost like universal expressions of honoring something, either as a form of prayer, as a form of remembering, honoring, cleansing. That it has that wonderful magical quality that I think. I mean, I grew up with candle and incense and chanting, and I suppose one thing that I would carry from the Catholic faith was benediction, not so much the Mass, But I loved benediction. There was the Gregorian chant. It was dark.
Yeah.
It was the candles and the incense. And then we have a Druid gathering, and what do? We chant, and we have candles or fire, and we have incense.
Well, it's because it works, doesn't it? You know, it's when you look at a ceremony like mass or like a Druid ceremony, you're hitting every sense. You're hitting sight, smell, taste, feel. And I suppose that human beings, you know, there are recipes for incense that go right back to the very beginnings of human existence. So we've always done these things.
Absolutely. And we still carry them on. So speaking of spirituality, can you remember your first spiritual experience? Or
I don't really know. I suppose that I've always got this awareness of trying to question these things, question everything that was going on around me, and trying to make sense of that. I do always remember being at mass and being really comfortable and really calm in those settings, and just feeling like that was the right place for me at that time. And I suppose that it's just always been with me. So I don't know that I could particularly pinpoint it. I mean, there have been times, you know, when I was sat in the Great Pyramid in Egypt or in the Temple of Philae, those places have a sense, they have a feeling. You can't help but be moved by them. But that's the same as if you go into any great cathedral in you know, England or Wales. They have a feel about them. So I think it's just always been with me. I think there have been times when I've been more spiritual than others. I walked the Camino a couple of years ago, and that whole journey was a really spiritual experience for me. Yeah, I mean, kind of like, which side is it? 800. I can't do that because I'm dyspraxic. 871 kilometers of it.
Well done. Okay, that was what, 6 weeks?
About 6 weeks, yeah. And that whole experience, you can't help but be spiritual throughout that whole experience. But did God pop up and tap me on the shoulder every 5 minutes? No, you know. So,
well, I suppose it depends on what you mean by God.
Yeah, and that's the $64,000 question, right? Because I think that we all experience the divine in ways that are different for each of us, and I think it's, you know, I think that we experience it at different times in our life as well. I know you've asked people about their daily practice and if they have a daily practice, and I absolutely do, in that I light incense on my altar every single day, and I've got a place at work where I can go for private prayer and reflection. But day to day, do I have a particular daily practice? I'll be honest and say, no, I don't. But there have been absolute times in my life where I had a solid daily practice, because there were times that I needed that connection. And at this point in my life, I'm going through a phase where I don't really need that connection so much. But my gods, my deities, the divine is always there with me. There are just times, and it kind of reminds me of the old poem, Catholic prayer poem, Footprints, yes, where it talks about Jesus walking along the sand with you, and at some points in your life he carries you. And you know,
footprints are no longer there. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I was given a copy of that on wood, carved into wood for my first Holy Communion. So.
Okay, so would you say Druidry is something you are or something you do?
I think it's something I do, because I think it's a way that I live my life. And I think it's the way that I carry myself and I conduct myself, but it's also the way that I notice what's happening in the world around me, and following the wheel of the year, and having these rituals. And I remember when I first read Penny Billington's book, where in the opening chapter she talks about just spending time walking around your local environment, walking around the block, and actually noticing what's happening in the world outside. And I remember realizing the first time I'm noticing that horse chestnut trees have a really beautiful pink flower. And I must have been like 25 by the time I realized that, because I just never really opened my eyes and seen any of it before. And so I suppose that it's what I do, because it's the way I live my life, and the fact that I now try and explore the seasons as they're going on around me. And I was really fortunate this summer. My partner and I decided that we were going to explore foraging an awful lot. So we would walk down by the local river and go to different places and bake some beautiful food. So we kind of like had apples and blackberries and strawberries and raspberries that we just collected from walking around, and cherries off the trees. And then we got some nuts. So we got a couple of hazelnuts, not too many, and a whole load of walnuts that are just sitting there now, ready for us to eat. And so just spending that little bit of time really exploring the world around us and looking at it, and seeing what's there to be seen. That to me is what Druidry is. So it's certainly what I do.
Wonderful. So just to your work then, where does Druidry fit in with your work? Because you're a chaplain in Her Majesty's prisons. So
yeah. So Druidry is literally everything that I do with work, if I'm perfectly honest. So I'm a pagan chaplain for the prison service. So I work in prisons as a chaplain, and we're very fortunate that we get an opportunity to do this job. And I suppose that as part of our job, we're responsible for people's faith and also their pastoral care. So we become their teachers, their guides, their confidants. We become their inspiration. We nurture them and look after them and take them through their highs and their lows. We look after them when their parents are ill or dying. We look after them when they're celebrating births or their birthdays. And people in prison, they go through some really difficult experiences. It's silly things like Christmas can be a time bomb that you just can't get away from, because it happens every single year and people celebrate it and the Christmas trees go up, and suddenly all you're reminded of is that another year of your sentence has passed, or that you've got 5 more years to go. So we truly are so fortunate to do what we do, because it's in my job description to give people hope and give them joy. And I suppose that as you pass through the Druid grade, part of the Druid grade is about how we help society, help people around us, and how we go on to become a teacher and an inspirer of people. And I suppose you really learn a lot about yourself. You really learn a lot about other people, and it's a massive responsibility to suddenly become the spiritual guide for 200 people, and to be their only source of knowledge and wisdom. And one of the things that they do help you do is realize that you have an awful lot to learn, because you just don't know anything when you walk into a room and you're kind of like, what do you guys want to do today? And suddenly you get all these different answers and you're like, I have no idea. But you also do get to buy an awful lot of books, which is really, really exciting. But we're incredibly fortunate people. There's a team of about 20 of us that work in English and Welsh prisons. So there are a number of prisons that have chaplains. Unfortunately, there are a few that don't. So if anybody's interested, that they can go onto the Pagan Federation website and look at that, or talk to people about coming into this role.
You're saying there are 20 pagan chaplains throughout the prison?
Yeah, there's a team of about 20 of us around the country. Okay. Yeah. So, and it really is, it's an honor to serve, I think. And I think that lots of people, especially when they've come through the Druid grade, you really get this sense of wanting to serve and wanting to give back. And this is a way that we really can. I think that people in prison, they often come to paganism and explore paganism because they have time to think. One of the beauties of paganism is that we're really non-judgmental in our approach. We don't have a judgmental God that's going there and saying, thou shalt not. But what we're encouraged to do is really explore our own moral compass and to see how we want to be as people and what feels right for us. And so one of the beauties of being a pagan chaplain is that you can really help people on their rehabilitative journey to really examine their soul and the person that they want to be. And lots of things that we do as druids is, you know, it's a developmental journey that we go on where we really examine the person that we are. You know, for those people that have done it and that have gone and through the dark night of the soul, where you literally examine the light and the dark, it can be a really interesting journey for people to go on. And you can see and do see people genuinely change their lives by walking the path of a druid whilst they're in prison. And if anything, they have got time to read. They can read, you know, more than we ever could. So they are sponges. They will absolutely take everything up. And it's also, I mean, one of the first things that most people on a pagan path learn, although it was something we were taught at secondary school just for our GCSE exams, actually, is relaxation techniques, something along the lines of the light body exercise. And just something as simple as that, you know, basic mindfulness that we take for granted in the outside world. Learning something like the light body exercise can just be life-changing for people in prison. So I'm really fortunate to be able to share that with people, and I'm really fortunate to be able to help people go on the journey, the spiritual journey that they want to go on.
Wonderful. Wow. So you're talking about how you support them.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that Druidry has supported you personally? Or is there a time when you would say Druidry has supported you?
So I think that when I look at the person that I was 10 years ago, I was a very, very different person. And when you start to look at yourself and start to examine who you are, the good and the bad, you know, the light and the dark. The great thing about Druidry is that we accept that we're not all perfect human beings and perfect individuals, and we learn to love and accept the dark side in ourselves. And I suppose that learning to love it and accept it also in some ways gives us a bit of control over it. But I was an angry little, I had middle child syndrome real bad when I was you know, 10 years ago. I was so jealous of everyone and thought I was constantly being left out all the time. And I was angry about a lot of things. And I suppose that it's really helped me find who I am. And as you go through, particularly when we work on ancestors, as we move into the ovate grade, one of the best things I did in prison actually was a Samhain ritual where I've never met my biological father, and for years I was really kind of like blasé about that. You can't lose what you never had. It didn't really affect me, but one year it kind of dawned on me that I needed to go through the grieving process of losing someone that I'd never had. And it was a massive realization for me that actually I was hurt by that. It did affect me, and it kind of flashed. The great thing about Facebook is memories flash up every now and then, and one of them was just recently, which was a picture of him. But through this Samhain ritual, I was really open and honest with the people that I was working with about what I was going through, and that I was grieving the loss of this person that I'd never met. And there are a lot of people in prison that have difficult relationships with their family or have no wider family, and so to be able to empathize with them and go through that journey with them, I suppose that I gave them the opportunity to go through that, but they gave me that space for that cathartic journey, and for me to be able to go through those emotions and work through that in a really, ironically, a really safe space.
And they can recognize you as a wounded person who suffers also. So you're not coming from a higher place of so-called perfection, So
yeah, it makes us human.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you honor the ancestors?
So I think that is really difficult because I don't really know my ancestors of blood and bone, but I do walk the lands in which I walk. And I suppose that the reverence that we give to the land that we walk, and I remember again, kind of right at the beginning of my OBOD journey, I was walking in the Malvern Hills, and there's an old Iron Age hill fort up in the Malvern Hills called British Camp, and to spend some time up there, just being with those people, you could hear them walking with you and going to these sacred spaces and spending time there and appreciating those that have come before us. I think that's how I honor my ancestors. And there's kind of the old cliche with Newton of standing on the shoulders of giants, and we really do. We are the sum of all of those people that have come before us. And so yeah, I suppose that's how I honor my ancestors. And I think that one of the interesting things is that as I've got older, I've realized that I don't need to know the names of my ancestors of blood and bone. They're still there. That there were still, however, 64. I've still got 64,000 great grandparents or whatever it is they tell you on Ancestry. Those people are still there. Just because I don't know their names and don't know their faces, it doesn't mean that they haven't made who I am. I've got brown hair and brown eyes, and one ear slightly bigger than the other because of people that came before me and made the person that I am. So yeah, I think just living your best life, you kind of honor them.
You mentioned ancestors of blood and bone, and another one for me is ancestors of milk. There's a Scottish phrase that the bonds of milk are stronger than the bonds of blood. And for some people who don't know that, for those that perhaps it's the families who've nurtured us, those bonds can be often stronger than the blood connection or the genetic connection.
Yeah, and I think that I think one of the things that I talk about a lot. Anybody that knows me is that I'll always say I haven't got a father, but I've got the best dad in the world. Like, I love my dad so much, and because he's brought me up, he's made me the man I am today, and I'm eternally grateful for his wisdom and his advice. And he kind of just knows every time I've got a problem really instinctively, and he'll turn around and go, "Come on, let's go into the office," and we'll grab a couple of glasses of whiskey and walk out into the backyard, and he'll just let me talk, and he just gives the best advice. So in some ways, it doesn't matter that we're not biologically related. He is by far the best dad I've ever had, and I'm so fortunate. I love him to bits.
So there's the that nature versus nurture. So there's the nature line, which is the genetic. Then there's the nurture line. So you get that from your stepdad.
Yeah.
And then with what he offers you is what he's had from his line. So
Absolutely.
there's a mixture all the time of blood and milk. And then there's a light line. There's an energetic line. We have druid ancestors that somehow are in the landscape and in the land. So if you go to, like you say, those sacred sites of those places, and you have a sense of connection with the ancestors, and they're not they're the ancestors of the land. And I think we can honor them and all that they have done and created.
And I think you're right that there definitely are ancestors of tradition, because I'm sure that many people watching will have spent time going into their sacred grove, their inner temple, whatever that place is that they want to call it or define it. And I would imagine that most people have seen people or things or been visited by people in that place, in that realm. And whether that is the super consciousness of Carl Jung or it's a figment of our imagination, neither of those things really matter, because what is important to us is the impact of that journey, of that contact, of those beings, whether they're there or not, and the way that it helps us change our lives. So yeah, we definitely have ancestors of tradition, and I learn a lot from my ancestors of tradition.
What do you what would you say Is there any one teaching or one learning or one piece of wisdom you've gotten from the ancestors of tradition that would stand out for you?
I don't know whether it's from the ancestors of tradition, but it's definitely from the order, and that's mirth and reverence with equal measure. And we kind of in the Stantii, the grove that I first joined when I found or came home to OBOD, it was led by two women, Bracken and Fee, and they are amazing women, and I truly owe them so much. I learned an awful lot about what it means to be a druid from those two women, and I know you know them well too. But we had two kind of phrases that went around the Stantii all the time, and it was mirth and reverence in equal measure, and hold close tightly and let go lightly. So
absolutely, and that's that bit like Cormac McCart, you know, a balance between the two polarities. Okay, so that's what you've learned from ancestors. So how would you recognize, or how do you recognize your responsibility yourself as an ancestor?
I think that for me in my day job, because I'm responsible for these people, integrity is just so important. The one thing that I have as a chaplain is integrity. It's the only weapon in my toolkit, because if I'm not true and if I'm not honest and I'm not open with those people, then you know that can have a massive effect on them in their journey. So that's how I walk that path. It's when I came into the job that I do now, I suppose that two things that were there for me, that if I have an impact on one person in the next 30 years, then I've won at life. And the other side of it is to just always be truthful. And that can also be turning around and going, do you know something? I just don't know. I haven't got the answer for you right now, but I will try my very best to go and find it. But by trying to skirt around an issue or try and fob them off or try and pretend that I do know everything, you do them a disservice and you do yourself a disservice. So yeah, really trying to live as best I can with integrity. And I think the other part of it is really owning your own mistakes. You know, I've made mistakes in my life, and there are people that have loved me that I've hurt, and it took me a long time to even realize that I'd hurt those people. And when I did, owning that and going and saying sorry and genuinely meaning that sorry and trying to make amends, or not that you often can, but owning your mistakes and really trying to do something about the things that you've done that maybe you're not too proud of, because we all make mistakes, you know, but actually just taking a little bit of ownership over that.
And that's how we learn, of course, is by making mistakes, but also it shows that we're human. And there's something around the importance of modeling not knowing. I think that's really, really important. And we're living now with this pandemic, we're living with so much not knowing.
And I think Philip often talks about his times when he went over to France and spent time with gurus. And I think it's really important that we don't set ourselves up as gurus, and by being able to turn around and go, I do not know, I have not got the answer right now. It really is a stopgap in that process. You kind of get knocked down from your high horse real quick if you've ever had one. You know, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
And we can see now the results of certainty. I think there are a lot of people in the world looking for certainty right now. And then there are certain world leaders, some of them not, I don't know if they're not bright or they're crazy or they're just very, very strategic. I don't know. I'm trying to be compassionate here. Is that they offer certainty, and to me, when I hear them, it's all lies. But people looking for certainty will grab onto that. And I think it's really, really important that we are right now living with uncertainty and the unknown, and in many ways, Druidry, well, for me, I think Druidry is equipping me to deal with the unknown, to deal with uncertainty, because we have no idea where we are going ahead into the future. We never did, but we
No.
always had some kind of illusion that we were in control and we could predict the future in some way. But now we don't. So that's like the old normal is no longer normal. So now we don't know, well, what is? Is there going to be a new normal, or how many new normals there going to be?
And I really hate that term, new normal. It really gets on my nerves. And I think that one of the things that's potentially going to come out of the coronavirus is that for the first time in a long time, we're genuinely talking about mental health and people's problems with mental health. And I think that one of the things that we fail to realize is that we all have mental health. And sometimes that mental health is good, and sometimes it's not good. And some of the practices of the order really help us to deal with the different levels of our mental health. And I know that it's helped me in times that I've struggled with my mental health. And I think that this idea of certainty and people looking for certainty, particularly in these really strange times right now, is that we're starting to figure out and starting to learn that actually we don't have any certainty at all, but we're coupling that with the fact that actually it's okay to talk about how we're feeling in our mental world. And in some ways the coronavirus has brought to the fore the fact that lots of people, it doesn't take much to unsettle people, and then for that to become into a bigger mental health problem. And I think for the last few years we've as a society we've kind of been building up to having those conversations, but I think that the coronavirus and this lack of certainty that we've got has really brought it out there, because it is really uncertain. It is really unsettling. We're talking about how anxious we're feeling about things, and where at the beginning of the coronavirus, my mom unfortunately got sick and spent a little bit of time in hospital. But I'd seen her on Mother's Day, which was 3 days before the country went into lockdown, and she then became sick on the Tuesday. And I kind of had to go to work and be like, I've just been and had dinner with my mum. She's now sick. What do I do? And they sent me home for 2 weeks because we didn't, it was the beginning of middle of March, and we didn't really know about this virus. It was just coming to Europe and destroying swathes of Italy. And, I've only been in Essex for a year. So at the time, I didn't really have a massive social network down here. And I only live in a little flat really with Gandalf. And to be shut up for 2 weeks with no contact to anyone, that massively impacted my mental health. And being able to go back into society and being like, I've really struggled with that, and I suppose what's great is that at the minute we're starting to learn how to talk about that and really accept that it's okay not to be okay, and that not just being a strapline, because actually there is nothing certain about the world right now. We keep on talking about this new normal, but we've got no idea what that's going to be. Are we going to go to work in the future? Aren't we going to go to work in the future? Are we going to do everything online? Is our food going to have to be delivered by delivery for the rest of time? And will we ever be able to have beer in the beer garden again? Kind of who knows? And I think that as we're, Essex is just locked down again today. So we're in for a really difficult few months. But I really hope that the positive out of this is that society develops the conversation and the ease of that conversation to talk about people's mental health, because it's an unknown killer now.
We need to be able to talk about it. Absolutely. Was there anything you did, any Druidic practice that you followed while you were at home for those 2 weeks? And you also mentioned the difficulty going back into society after the 2 weeks. Yeah. Was there anything that helped you that it might help people who are listening?
I think it's just the thing that really helped me was routine, if I'm honest. Once I'd kind of got over the initial shock of it, was building that routine. And that comes in many different ways. One of the things that I spoke earlier about the fact that my daily practice kind of comes and goes, but at those times when it's strongest, it's always about starting with something like the light body, and then going into my sacred grove, and actually spending time just in that space, and being comfortable in that space. And there's an old kind of saying that if you can't find 5 minutes a day to meditate, then you probably need to do 25. And just actually, and it's not really druidic practice, but just spending time waking up in the morning and allowing yourself to wake up. I know that one of the other things that Philip has done is the sleep clinic, and I was kind of a really early adopter to the sleep clinic. And one of the exercises that he has in the sleep clinic is all about how you wake up, and spending the time to genuinely wake up. And lots of people have lots of different practices, particularly early morning, where they call in the quarters, or they greet the rising sun. And I think that can be really, really important, just starting your day right.
Yeah, I have a practice when I wake up. I'm still in bed when I do it. And yesterday morning, my daughter called to me an hour before I should have gotten up because she missed the bus. So I had to get up and drive her to school. And it threw me. And I was dragging myself for 2 hours afterwards because I did not have my morning practice. It sounds to me like I'm very, very rigid, but it's the one practice that in the morning, when the alarm, I have a gong that wakes me.
Of course you do.
That is, no, it's on my phone. Sorry, I chewed.
Oh, right. I thought you literally had a little man in the night downstairs that went ding.
No, one of my staff members, I have a gong.
Breakfast is served.
That's exactly. But it's just that easing in, and it's that waiting for my soul to catch up when I wake up. And it's just that easing, and that really, really helps me, and it has me grounded for the day. But it was really struck me yesterday that I had to jump out of bed, drag myself into the car, just put a coat over my nightie because I didn't bother getting dressed, and just drive my daughter into school and come back. But I still wasn't right for a while. And I thought, I missed my morning ritual. And it's that mundane routine. That's what grounds us.
And I think that people going back into society, I think that allowing yourself to be afraid, it was really interesting that as we were starting to get people that had shielded coming back into work, it was meeting them and greeting them and talking to them about the things that had changed since they'd been away, and allowing them to show their fear of an alien environment, because it was okay for all of us. We just worked through it. So all of those changes, by the time they came back, had become absolutely normal. The world changed, and we accepted it and moved with it because we just kind of had to. But other people coming out into that world, those people that are, that are starting to leave their houses for the first time in 6 months, and we're all walking around with face masks on and spray everywhere and hand sanitizer, just being afraid by that, because that isn't normal. And I think that hopefully, again, we're starting to develop this conversation and this language where we're expressing those ideas.
Absolutely. So which you mentioned, I'm just going back to Druidry again. You mentioned you've gone through all 3 grades. Which grade would you say you preferred, or was the most enjoyable or the most difficult?
I think I absolutely loved the bardic grade, and I was kind of like the Satanti I'd go for a couple of years, because I was literally the eager beaver that wanted to do everything. But the great thing about the bardic grade, I can't sing, I can't dance, I am not a bard, but what it gave you was a base, a solid foundation on which to build the rest of your practice. It really gives you the square and the circle, and so that was really important to me, being quite new to esotericism in that way. I'm actually just going to be real cliche and say that my favorite grade, however, was the ovate. I think that we do things and we experience things in the ovate grade that we just wouldn't do at any other time, and whether that is being in a round hut surrounded by people, drumming yourself into trance, or allowing yourself to go and get lost in the woods, or just, you know, actually being comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And I think that that's what the ovate allows you to do. We talk about this idea that we go and get lost in the woods, and we do, and it's fantastic.
And it is. You mentioned that you can't sing, you can't dance, and you can't whatever it is. You're no bard. But I want to bring you back to Awen and Imas. Are there times in your life when you've received the Awen or the Imas, even though you don't express that through singing, dancing, writing poetry, or reading, or whatever?
So my bardic gift to the world was to inspire people, and I hope that I really have inspired people. And there are just these moments when it really does flow, and if you touch people and help them on their journey, and whether that's been, you know, I've been really fortunate that I've been part of the running of a couple of groves, and to have new people come along and to help them find their feet, or just to, you know, be walking down the street and someone says something and you say something to them that inspires them, or just to do wacky and crazy things to make people laugh or smile or think about things. I remember one of the craziest things, or one of the moments of Arwen I think I had most, was again a summer gathering. Fiona had written the ritual, and it was the first year where she was exploring the reasons why people go to Glastonbury Tour, and you know, we were all kind of doing our thing where we walked very royally into.
You were the tourist, weren't you?
I was the tourist, yeah, and everyone was kind of like walking very, very regally, and there had just been the person before me was a widow, and she went in. Lindsay, who played that character so well at the time, she walked in real kind of solace, and put some flowers down, and it was a really deeply, you know, meaningful experience, because people do go to sacred spaces to be able to mourn and to memorialize people. And I was the tourist, and for whatever reason, I was kind of like just at the campsite getting ready to go, and I suddenly turned around and went, "Has anyone got any binoculars? And I need a hat. I need a hat." And has anyone got a guidebook? And I kind of like went up to the tour and just kind of like hung out at the back, and everything was going on around me. And then this bit had just happened that was quite solace, and suddenly it was my turn. And I just pushed my way through and like pushed past everyone, and was sort of like, excuse me, get out of the way, coming through. And then just sat there and pulled out my phone and was like, hey! And took this sort of like photos, this video of turning around. And there's a great photo on Facebook of a lady who's got this face sort of like, because I'd literally just gate crashed this ritual. And then I started to deliver the line, and obviously everyone laughed. And it's moments like that, you know, that's kind of just, I don't know where any of that came from, but just this idea of just bursting through the crowd and trying to really bring something to that ritual. I suppose it's moments like that I think are really inspiring, and people, you know, people remember that it meant something to them. And I think that Fee was just so clever the way that she wrote that ritual and put it together, because that kind of light and the dark, and those two things that balanced each other in a very kind of real physical way there in front of you. She was so clever. It was brilliant. But being able to bring it to life was great.
I remember seeing you dressed as you were, and Fee had made it clear earlier on, everybody has to be in robes. And I thought, because you're usually in robes, I'm like, what's Craig doing? Okay. Because, you know, we're asked to be in robes, but nobody's going to, you know, you're not going to have to do detention or anything if you don't. So I had no idea.
I think I just had like a pair of shorts and like a hoodie, a short sleeve hoodie on or something, and a cap.
You didn't even long trousers, no.
No, I think it was a pair of shorts.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it's moments like that, and that to me is real, Arwen. That is real inspiration. And again, like I say, people remember things like that, and it really made that ritual as special as it was. So.
Absolutely. So I imagine the tour is special to you, and I think it's special to all of us, and particularly those of us who attend the gatherings in Glastonbury. Is there any other sacred site that's actually special to you? It may be a well-known one, or it may not be a well-known one, but
so I think that I also did training with the Anglesey Druid Order, and when you do the Anglesey Druid Order course, you really immerse yourself into the mythological cycle of Wales and the stories of the Mabinogi and the landscape of Anglesey, and so that place is still very special to me and very important to me. But I've recently, on coming down to Essex, we've got a Roman temple in Harlow, not too far away from me, and so I've been celebrating the Wheel of the Year at the Harlow temple, and that place has now become really, really special to me and really sacred to me. And I think it's quite a nice touch that pagans have been worshipping in that place for 2,500 years, and we're still there doing our thing. So yeah, and I think that also kind of goes to show that sacred space can literally be on your doorstep. It doesn't have to be the big tour or Stonehenge. Your sacred space can, because again, where the Santi meet in their grove, it's Heaton Park, which is just a municipal park in the middle of Manchester, and that grove is a massively sacred space because Druids have been worshipping there for, I think, 13 years continuously, and so that piece of land is incredibly special to me.
Absolutely. And we were talking about earlier about honoring ancestors and how we take responsibilities being ancestors. So you're talking about where you are now. You talk about, people have been holding ceremony now for the last 2,500 years. And then you talk about that park in Manchester, and that how important that is, that all land is sacred wherever you are. And I agree, you don't have to be at the big places. We celebrate the winter solstice in a sacred site in South Kilkenny called Knockrow. We have 2 passage tombs, one aligned to the sunrise and one to the sunset.
Wow.
It's like our Newgrange. It's not as spectacular as Newgrange because it hasn't been rebuilt.
Yeah.
It's growing. And I've never gone to Newgrange at the winter solstice because for me, no, I stay in my place for these important times, because all land is sacred. And the more you hold ritual, I think, for me, I think the energy grows, and it's honoring those who've gone before and also honoring those who are yet to come.
And I think it's about connection, isn't it? I'll be honest that I've been to a number of OBOD rituals at Stonehenge, and like for me, I firmly believe that the place is just it's a tourist site. It's been a tourist site for 2,500 years. It was probably just erected because people were a little bit bored. They had a bit of time on their hands and they needed somewhere to mark their local marketplace. It's kind of like a glorified bullring. And so I don't really feel a spiritual connection when I go to that place. And having said that, I've met people, or I've been at Stonehenge when other people around me have had really powerful spiritual experiences in that place and that time. So yeah, I think it's okay not to have spiritual awakenings when we're kind of told that we're supposed to, because not every bit of land does speak to us. I like rivers, and not everyone likes rivers. So.
And I like forests. And I think it's a bit like, we have different tastes in music, we have different tastes in literature. All of it is valid, or art, and some things resonate with us that don't resonate with other people, and all of it is valid. And I have been at sacred sites where I'm not feeling anything, and others are going oohing and ahhing, and I'm going, whoops, I'm getting nothing. But you meet people. There are people you meet, and you have an instant connection with them, and others you don't. There's no hostility, but you just don't have that resonance with them. And I
think it's really important to accept that we communicate or experience deity in different ways also. Not all of us can visualize not all of us can visualize with visions. Some of us visualize with sounds or smells or tastes. And I think that when you're bringing or helping people kind of find their spiritual side, they often kind of want to have all of these experiences right at the very beginning, and they want to do, you know, astral projection straight away, and trying to help them understand that actually we don't all connect in that way. And so it's really important that they find a way of connecting that's true and honest to them. You know, some of us do have great kind of connections with magnetic energy and ley lines and all that kind of stuff, and others of us just have to accept that we don't, and that's fine also. I think it's an equally genuine experience not to be moved by something.
Absolutely, and thank you for saying that. I'm just moving on to something more personal now.
Oh, gone.
It's not exactly confession time. What would you say has been your greatest achievement, or something you've done that you're most proud of in your life?
I think I'm probably most proud of my job. I think I'm really fortunate to do the job that I do, and it took a great leap of faith to do the job that I do. I was working. I was a store manager for Costa Coffee before I joined the prison service. I was earning quite, you know, a decent salary for not doing all that much, and to kind of give that all up to go and become a chaplain, when in reality I didn't know if I had the right skill set or the right temperament or the right personality traits to succeed in that job. And I literally quit and walked into something, and, you know, went from zero income to kind of working part-time for part of a year, and then slowly building up to full-time hours. That leap of faith and being brave enough to take myself out of that comfort zone. I think that as human beings, we often get stuck in what's comfortable and what's easy, but sometimes we just need to take the plunge. And so being able to do that, and you know, I think that one of the things that I'm able to do is bring paganism to the fore in the community, to show people in the establishment that paganism is a serious spirituality, it's a serious religious practice, and that actually what we do is as important as any other faith, and should be given the same respect as any other faith. And so that, you know, not only do I work with the people that I work with, but I also work with the staff and the establishment. And so that's really important for me, to actually be a flag bearer for our community. You know, because I think it's really interesting. If you read the Daily Mail, they kind of have this idea that we're all crackpots. But then, yes, you know, there have been times that I've sat around the table in the Georgian Pilgrim, and there's kind of, you're there, and Chris Hughes is there, and Dave's there, and Ronald Hutton's there, and there are all these very, very professional people that have very, very normal, solid, respectable day jobs that also happen to be druids. And so to be able to explain directly or show directly the establishment that we are normal people and our religion is genuine and true to us, I suppose that being able to do that makes me really proud.
Well done. Would you, okay, so just a related question. What has been the biggest challenge you have that you've overcome? I mean, I don't know if this was one, because in a sense, starting off on 0 hours as a volunteer and then working part-time, I mean, that is a real step into the unknown. Yeah. We've been talking about the unknown and uncertainty, and not knowing, giving up, you know, solid bread and butter to follow your heart in some way, or follow your spirit. Yeah. And then, of course, you're not just an ordinary chaplain, you manage chaplains. Am I right?
Yeah, I do. I'm fortunate in that I'm the first pagan managing chaplain in the prison service. So there are, you know, 130 prisons around the country, and so actually to have from the smaller faiths, there's a Sikh managing chaplain, a Jewish managing chaplain, and now there's a pagan managing chaplain. I'm not the only managing chaplain that's in the order, but I'm the only pagan managing chaplain that's in the order. And so to be able to gain promotion to that role was, it's a success for our community. And I very much hope that I'm not the last pagan to be promoted, and because I've managed to be successful and show them that we are professional and that we can do this, hopefully I've opened a door. And there are some great people that work as pagan prison chaplains, and some of those deserve the recognition, and now we've proved that it works, and that actually we make great chaplains, and we make great managing chaplains. Hopefully that door's open for other people.
Wonderful. So would you say that's your biggest challenge you've ever overcome, or have you had other challenges that
like I've had a great life. I've been so lucky. I've been so fortunate. I don't think that I've had too many challenges in my life. I've got a number of regrets in my life,
no,
but
that question.
Oh well, yeah. But challenges. I've been relatively lucky. I'm sure that some of my friends would say that I'm particularly clumsy, so managing to pass my driving test was a particular challenge of mine. But for some reason, they gave me a license. So I did in the first week that I had my car, managed to skid on snow and scratch it, though. Brand new car, but that's a story for another day. But no, I don't feel like I've particularly had challenges. I suppose I'm really quite severely dyslexic, okay. And so being able to overcome that and work as a professional, I suppose, is something that I'm quite proud of. And I remember one year my mom didn't quite realize how badly dyslexic I was until I was writing some Christmas cards out, and she saw kind of my writing, and I think I stumbled over the word any. Why is any such a difficult word to spell, and why doesn't it begin with an E? So yeah, I think that the overcoming my dyslexia was a great challenge.
Okay, well done. So you mentioned the word regrets.
Uh-huh.
You said you've many regrets, or some regrets?
So I certainly do have some regrets. Like I think I said earlier, hurting some people that have loved me is a massive regret in my life. Not taking a year out before university and going traveling was a massive regret. I certainly wasn't ready to start at university, and kind of my whole university experience was a bit of a regret, I suppose. And I suppose that I regret not having quit my job at Costa 5 years before, because I was really ready to go and not being brave enough to do that. But yeah, I suppose hurting people. I wasn't even aware that I was doing it, and I suppose that and Brecken, God bless her, she really opened my eyes on many things, but that was one of them, that she really helped me see and understand, and so being able, hurting people, I think is.
And I think that's something most of us at some point have done that. You said you've had a good life. Is there anything you'd change about your life?
I think I would have made a great father, and being gay, particularly, now it's a little bit different. But when I was, my mum, but when I was kind of going through like my early 20s, it just wasn't really an option to be able to have kids as a gay man, particularly not your own children as a gay man. And so I think I would have made a great father. And yeah, if I could change anything, it would be to have a couple of kids. Unfortunately, I think before my partner gets any stupid ideas, I think I'm a little bit too old to be starting having a family now.
The next question. How old are you?
I'm 38 in December.
Well, for what it's worth, I had my first child at 39 and my second at 42, and Howard had his last two at 53 and 57.
Well, there you go then.
That age. So
there you go.
For your partner, but anyway, never too late. What are you most grateful for?
Oh God, I'm most grateful for life. Like, I think that we only have one life, and we are so fortunate to be able to live our lives, and we are so fortunate to be able to live our lives now at this time, and to experience the things that we experience. And I think that I'm literally kind of living my best life, and I think that a lot of that comes to just accepting your surroundings and accepting where you are and the point that you are at in your life. But yeah, I mean, we're so fortunate. I think that we spend far too much of our time trying to wish away our lives. Mm-hmm. And so just to be able to actually live it in the here and now, you know, I think that's what I'm most grateful for, because we only have potentially one of them, so we may as well live it. And as much as I've had a truly great life, it hasn't been easy, or I haven't had an easy life necessarily, but even at the times when it's been hard, I think that I've really tried to actually try and live each day. And yeah, I'm fortunate that I can do that, but I'm very grateful for it.
Well, we've one life at a time, anyway.
Well, yeah, one life at a time.
So what would you say, what particularly brings you joy?
I think red wine really brings me joy, if I'm perfectly honest. Red wine and good beer. Oh my God, it's Stoptober. I haven't had a beer for 2 weeks. Anybody that knows me or has seen me in Glastonbury will know that I really do take an awful lot of joy out of a good pint of beer.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, but I think that I really like the social life that comes with sitting in a pub and surrounded by really great people, and just sitting there and different people coming in and out of the pub all day and having some food and just talking with friends. One of the great things about when the order gets together is that there are people that you often only see maybe once or twice a year if you're lucky. And so to be able to sit in the Georgian Pilgrim, or to sit at the campsite around a fire and just share a few beers and share our stories and our tales and our laughs and our songs, I think that's a beautiful thing.
That's one of the wonderful things about the order, and at the moment that's on hold. So let's hope in the future that we can get back to doing that.
Yeah, because I think that lots of people have missed it, actually. Because I think it's been really interesting, hasn't it? And again, we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but lots of things have kind of moved online, and Zoom has become really important, and lots of rituals and groves have kind of had an online presence and have done an online ritual. But there's no substitute for a hug, and we hug a lot as druids, and I think that's one of the things that we're all missing right now.
I think the power of touch, can never be underestimated. The power of physical contact, and that's, I think, one of the will be one of the fallouts from this pandemic, is that lack of physical affection. I see Jane Myatt, I miss hugging everybody. Absolutely.
But it won't last forever. Like, at one, we will get through this one way or another. It will either become just like the common cold, and we kind of have bouts of it every year, or we'll develop some sort of vaccine or immunity. But at some point, there will be a point where we will be able to do those things again, and that gives me an awful lot of hope.
This too shall pass. I think that's one thing we have hold on to. And I mean, it's always helped me in times of great difficulty is to remember this too shall pass, that, you know, it will move. How it'll go to, I don't know, but it's living in the now. Okay, so is there a person in your life that you admire?
Again, is it a cliche to say my mum? I really admire my mum. She
no, their mum. So you know, so go on. I'd love to hear
no, like so, you know, my mum has she really worked hard to kind of to bring us up and to show us the meaning of right and wrong and the value of life. And she's an incredibly strong woman. So just her working so hard to give us the best start that we could have as kids, and then the way that she's been so strong through things that have happened over the last few years. She doesn't realize how strong she is, and she's truly she's truly an inspiration to me. I think
so. She's hearing you say this now, which is lovely.
She's in Spain, dialing in, listening to this as well. Actually, I know that you told me I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, but I did give my mum the heads up. I figured that she was safe. She was safe in Spain, not telling anyone. So yeah, she's truly an inspiration for me. I think that one of the things that we're really fortunate about, there have been times through my OBOD journey where I've been really proud of having Philip as our spiritual leader as well. Because there have been, like, I just trust him and I trust the decisions that he makes, because he's so open and honest, and he's led us he's led us with such integrity, and I think he doesn't say no very, or obviously you now, but he made a point of not saying no very honest, and being really open and honest with the whole OBOD family when he made difficult decisions, and so being led by him, I think that, you know, we're privileged to have the order and the people that lead our order, because they do us a great service.
I think Philip has done an absolutely amazing job from starting with maybe 10, 20 people to have brought it to what it has become now. A very hard act to follow, indeed he is. But
you'll be grand.
Thank you. He's been such an inspiration to everybody, but and certainly to me. And I know from conversations with people that he has had a huge influence on people's lives.
Well, I think that, like, the order changes people's lives. It's changed my life, and, you know, I know lots of people in the order who have truly had their lives made an awful lot better by going through their journey with OBOD. So we are very fortunate. And
I know, you know, it's very much a spiritual development path. It's a self-development path. But I know people who've been physically ill, whose illness went or was healed as a result of joining the order and following the Gwers. I mean, it can't make any promises. It's not psychotherapy, but it's certainly very therapeutic. Or it can.
Well, I think what it allows you to do is, in some ways, to become your own therapist.
I think so. Yeah. And it's you know, one of the key things, you know, along with service and love of nature, is one of responsibility, and taking responsibility for yourself and your own path. And of course, right through the Gwers, certainly in the Bardic, is, you know, this may be, here is something you might like to do. This may not be right. If it's not, doesn't feel right for you now, leave it. Or if it does feel right, you do it. And that gives you permission to do or not to do. And it is really, really powerful.
I think it's really interesting when you see different people and how some people really struggle with that. And it really makes me smile that some people struggle with that, because the people that struggle with it, you know, that they just need to struggle with it. Like, I think that the magic of the Gwers is that it really takes us on our own personal journey, and it takes us on the journey that we need to go on. And people often talk about the fact that they won't do a Gwers for months and months and months, and then suddenly it will just catch their eye and they'll pick it off the shelf and it will be the perfect Gwers for them at the place that they're at. But some people just struggle with that freedom because they just need that rigidity. And so to watch them go through their journey, anybody that's spent any time in the order will obviously have seen different people going on their journey. And sometimes just watching people struggle, it's so funny, but it's so beautiful and so magical.
Yeah, because I loved that freedom rather than you have to do it this way and you have to do it now. It was always that choice. And of course, paradoxically, and I do say in psychology, as a psychologist, you say you are free to do this and you are free not to do it. It's called, what is it? The Ericksonian confusional technique. You even do it if you were doing hypnosis, for example. You're free to do this and you're free not to do it. And that allows the person to make a choice, and often more likely to do it. You know,
but some people just need that kind of direction.
Yeah, I know. They're the ones who want certainty. And I suppose this is part of the Druidic path, is to become your own teacher, your own person of influence, to be able to say, I'm going to do this because this is right for me right now, not because so-and-so told me. I suppose it's welcome, Pat. Pat Booker is just sneaking in for a few minutes on a tea break. She's working actually online teaching. So she's on her tea break and she told me she'd sneak in. So she's just arrived. So,
and I think it kind of comes full circle, doesn't it? Back to that idea of integrity, you know, so.
Absolutely. So is there, what would you say? Yeah. Looking at the world now, one concern you have about the modern world?
Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump getting re-elected absolutely petrifies me, and the fact that there might not be a smooth handover of power, you know, that also petrifies me. And I think that it's wider than that, isn't it? Because it's not just Donald Trump. There's this whole kind of you know, Brexit and people's reaction to Brexit, and you know, kind of the different movements around the world that are populist, and it just scares me that the fact that Trump seems to have created this populist model that other people are following and falling into. And I think that there's clearly something there, like there's people are reacting to concerns that they have, and I suppose that in liberal Western democracy, what we haven't got right now are the tools or the leaders that can help those people solve those problems. But the way that society is reacting right now, with populism, just generally terrifies me. And it terrifies me for our children, because they're the ones that are going to have to pick up the fallout from this populist movement. And you know, when people that follow kind of the media, and I think that through coronavirus, I've definitely been consuming less media than ever before, which has been very positive for my mental health. But just the way that, you know, you have Trump kind of standing there and saying, you know, stand back and stand by. Well, the difference between Britain and America is that when we have a protest, there are people there, and the worst that's going to happen is, you know, a can's going to get thrown at your head. In America, they all walk around with rifles and guns and automatic weaponry, and people are literally turning around and going, there is going to be anarchy.
Yeah.
And it's a very real kind of threat that on November the 6th, we're all going to wake up and the leader of the free world has just caused a civil war in his country.
Yeah. So what gives you hope?
Just humanity, I think, gives me hope. People give me hope. I think that, so when I walked the Camino, not last summer, but the summer before, you really experience humanity in a very different and unique way. I remember stopping by the side of the road and talking to a young lady that she was dealing with her blisters. Blisters become a really important thing when you're walking kind of 500 miles, right? And pilgrims, they will just stop and check on other pilgrims to make sure they're all right. And there was this young lady, she must have been in her mid-20s, maybe early mid-20s, and she worked in the city in London, and she'd become really disillusioned with that environment and just the way that people just want to see you fail in that environment. And she's come on the Camino where there are all these people that are being kind to her, and they don't want anything back for that. They're just being kind.
And they want her to succeed.
They just want her to succeed, and they don't want her to succeed for any other reason than they want her to get to the end. And so seeing humanity in that way has been absolutely, it's amazing. And I suppose that it's kind of, if anything, tell them what you wore. Oh, I wore a kilt. I wore a kilt the whole way, just because obviously you kind of have to do that. So my mum's dad is a Glaswegian Henderson. And so, again, kind of part of that honouring the ancestors. How did I not even think about that? And part of the honouring ancestors is I walked the whole Camino in kind of my family tartan, which was a really great experience. But we're seeing it again, aren't we, with kind of the coronavirus. At the very beginning of the coronavirus, people were putting notes through letterboxes, turning around and going, I'm here if you need some groceries, if you just need to chat. And then all those people that volunteered for the NHS app and things like that. At times, we genuinely also see the best of humanity. And so that truly gives me hope, because there are an awful lot of very, very good people out there.
I think, and that, that's so important to remember that at times like this. I mean, I know whenever there's a crisis here in Ireland, and often there's one with bad snow where we come to a standstill because we're not able, we think of one snowplow in the country. That's an exaggeration. People come out and help, and like over with you, there were people helping neighbors, and I think still are. And
yeah,
that is wonderful. And it's cooperation that will help us to survive, not competition, even though the primary narrative in the past has been it's competition that makes the world go round, it makes the economy work. But actually, we're going to survive through cooperation. So
yeah, I think we are. And it's a shame in some ways that it takes a crisis to bring the best out of us. And I think that it's a bigger shame that once that crisis is over, we go back to being the way that we were. And I kind of wonder if it's kind of like it's like the Me Too movement. It's like Black Lives Matter movement. There are all of these flashes in the pans where everyone gets behind it and is turning around and saying how terrible the world is and shouldn't we really do something about it. But then 2 weeks later, the news seems to have moved on. And it's exactly the same as I can't remember her name, the Love Island presenter who committed suicide, and the world was kind of like, oh my god, the media has just bullied this woman, hate on Twitter and people trolling, it's so terrible. And yet 2 weeks later, people have forgotten that story, and we're kind of it all just started again. And I suppose that as human beings, we need to just learn to stop at the supporting each other. Let's do the supporting each other, be really great, and then when the crisis is over, just carry on with that same ethic.
It just reminds me that pain is a great motivator. Pain reminds you to do your stretches or to eat properly or whatever. That so often when things are fine, we just let things slip. So it's around remembering that, and that's how we survive. Speaking of, you were talking about guns and everything else. When, and I suppose violence, but when and why would you fight back, or are you a pacifist at all times?
I think there is a part of me that is just a little bit of a Rottweiler. Like, I can't help myself. I've got one real clear memory of when I was at university. We were on a bus going into Birmingham city centre, and there were just these guys at the back of the bus being really badly homophobic, and I just couldn't help myself but go up and challenge those guys. And I suppose that I'm like that quite a bit. I really struggle with injustice. I really struggle with people that are bullies. And I think that again, that's something that paganism installs in us is to shout truth into the world, and to stand up for truth. And when there's an injustice, or people are bullying or intimidating or treating other people wrong, I can't really help myself but try and do something about that. Fortunately, to date, it's never really got me into an awful lot of trouble, but I imagine that one day it will.
Well, I think it's wonderful to be able to stand up and be counted and to speak up and stand up. I think that's something really, really important and something that's admirable. I'm conscious I'm running out of battery, but I'm going to end on, you mentioned, doing the eightfold wheel of the year in that place in Essex. So
The Hollow Temple.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the name. What would you say is your favorite festival?
Samhain is definitely my favorite festival, and I think that, well, because Samhain has a twofold kind of aspect to it. One of it is where we remember our glorious dead, we remember our ancestors, but the other part of it, and particularly in the OBOD group ritual, the Kaliak comes around and she takes something from you. And there was a few years ago, again up at the Stantii, where someone just turned around and said, "What, you mean we just chuck our shit in the fire?" And I think that was really great. Like, literally, that's what we do. We just chuck our shit in the fire, and that is a really beautiful thing. And in work, I really try and start my journey with people at Samhain, where they have this opportunity to just chuck their shit in the fire, just let it go, just let it burn and burn it off, and actually, to just start afresh. It's okay to empower yourself to start again. And that's what we do at Samhain.
It is. And, there's something around the Wheel of the Year that every 6 weeks, we remind ourselves of our intentions about where we are in our inner landscape. Like, what is Imbolc about? And then what is, the spring equinox, we're planting seeds. And then we're talking about generativity at Bealtaine. And then we're making a promise at the summer solstice, and something else at Lunasa. And then we reflect on our harvest at the autumn equinox. What I love about that is there's a reminder of where we are, and then we can clear off all the crap at Samhain and then start it.
And actually, that seed growing metaphor is a really great metaphor in life. And I think the best thing about the Wheel of the Year is that every year we get to replant those seeds. Can we see the cat? Come here, Gandalf. Oh no, he's kind of right over there. One of the things that we get to do every year is to replant that seed. And even if we've failed, or we haven't watered it enough, or we've let the sun go and burn it, every February we really get to think about what we want to grow. And then every March we get to plant that seed. And that's a beautiful, it's one of the beautiful things about modern paganism is this endless circle of just trying to make yourself a better person. And that's what we do every year. We just plant a little seed and just change one thing about ourselves. And
and I think many seeds get planted, not all seeds germinate, and not all seeds survive, and that is the way with nature. But it's that non-judgmental way of recognizing that we'll have another go and see, is this the right seed? Is this the right soil for this seed? Is this the right time, etc.
It's interesting, isn't it, these kind of crossovers that we've got, because one of my favorite parables from Mark's Gospel is the parable of the mustard seed. And part of that parable is just that you've got to have the right seed at the right time in the right soil, and then it will grow. So it's about making and allowing ourselves the space to actually throw those seeds, and accepting that some of them won't grow, but some of them will fall into the fertile soil. And that's okay. It's okay to reap what we sow.
And it's sometimes trial and error, but the important thing is never to give up.
Yeah.
And just to keep doing it. Craig, I've 100% parallel. It has been just an absolute joy talking to you. And I know from the comments here that people have really enjoyed the chat. So Thank you so much for joining me.
You're
There's
welcome.
Gandalf having the last word.
Oh, come here. Oh, I missed him. Sorry. He's gone running off again.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. And I look forward to, someone says, well done, Eimear and Craig, for a wonderful chat. Hugs all around. I look forward to seeing you all next week at the same time, 8 o'clock, for another fireside chat with another member of the order. And I look forward to seeing you all then. So in the meantime, take care.
Slán go bhfuil.
Oh, well done. You stay, Craig. And, I'm going to end the broadcast now. Take care. Slán go bhfuil.
Slán go bhfuil.